out of the World Trade Organization. They're all part of TTIP.
Let's now interject into the discussion the ideas of two economists recorded earlier. First, Khz Short, Senior Fellow at the Peterson Institute for International Economics in Washington, D.C. He thinks TTIP could have a big impact not just on non-tariff barriers, but also on the remaining trade tariffs.
I think if you eliminated all those tariffs, the immediate impact would probably be $35 billion gains for both sides. So that's not substantial. As a share of GDP, it's very small. But for government work, that's a pretty good payoff.
But the impact of lifting non-money tariff barriers, well, people make great claims about it, but it's very difficult to quantify, isn't it?
That's exactly right, because you have to make a number of assumptions. And the big studies that were done before the TTIP negotiations got underway estimated that a certain percentage of regulatory measures would yield results that reduce the costs imposed by those measures by a quarter or so. And from those assumptions, which are very general and hard to quantify, but taking those estimates, the studies found over $100 billion of additional gains come from the trade agreement. Whether that happens or not, and in what areas, really is up to what comes out of the negotiations.
Khz Short of the Peterson Institute in Washington. These negotiations are taking place amid quite a lot of secrecy. That also means that assessing the potential benefits is even more difficult, according to Ian Wooten, Professor of Economics at the University of Strathclyde in Glasgow.
Given that the negotiations are so secretive, we really have no idea what is going to be the eventual outcome of the negotiations, and so consequently trying to give the quantitative appraisal of the outcome when we don't actually know what it's going to look like is really difficult.
Would it help if it were more out in the open?
Yeah, this is something I don't understand. I don't think it's useful to have these discussions in quite the degree of secrecy that they're having. It does provide fuel to conspiracy theorists about deals being done in smoke-filled rooms. But I think it would be much better if we knew exactly what sort of horse trading was taking place.
Professor Ian Wooten at Strathclyde University in Glasgow. Firstly, on secrecy, Ali, is the criticism about secrecy justified, or is there a need for it?
I think there's a bit of both. Transparency is actually important for businesses, because if you don't know what some of the negotiating aims are, it's quite difficult to articulate to sort of perhaps members what the benefits they stand to gain are. On the other hand, if you're going to go out and reveal your entire negotiating hand, then we also start off on the back foot, and that's quite difficult for us to be able to protect some of our standards as well.
Are you worried about secrecy, Nick?
Very worried about it. You know, you can justify a degree of secrecy if you're negotiating one tariff against another, but if you're negotiating big areas of public policy, it simply can't be justified.
Can you quantify the benefits that you think will come out of a successful conclusion of the talks?
Is it possible, or do you want me to give you some
Can you do it?
Yeah.
People are putting great big $100 billion sort of dollar results on the table as a negotiation
I think
point.
what's up for dispute is the degree and extent of benefits to the rest of society in terms of numbers. I don't think it's a question about, quite frankly, sort of harm or damage. I quite understand, frankly, that when it comes to non-tariff barriers, in terms of sort of making absolute predictions, it's a lot more difficult, and business understands that.
I would definitely dispute the claim that we're not talking about damage here. The most recent report that was done on economic benefits or harm shows that 600,000 jobs are predicted to be lost in Europe.
I presume, although I'm not sure that Nick might be talking about the Tufts study.
Yeah.
The Tufts study uses a completely different model that is not even, it's called the UN Global Policy Model, and even the author of this report has said that his modeling might not be anywhere near as sort of robust as the model, the CGE modeling, and